It is the morning of December 26, 1776. George Washington's assault force is 3 hours behind schedule. 2/3 of his army is missing, and the men who did cross the river are marching through a freezing storm that has soaked their gunpowder, rendering their weapons useless. A few miles away, the enemy commander has already received a handwritten note from a loyalist spy, warning him of the exact time and location of the American attack. Tactical logic suggests this should end in a slaughter. Instead, Washington is about to capture nearly 1,000 professional soldiers and secure the survival of the revolution without losing a single man in combat. The plan drawn up on paper was effectively dead before the first shot was fired. This is the story of how a series of logistical disasters created the specific, unplannable conditions required for a miraculous outcome. In July 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence marked a peak of optimism for the American cause. But as this document was being distributed, the military reality was already shifting. By August, the British landed 32,000 troops on Long Island. Washington's forces were routed and nearly surrendered. The losses continued along the Hudson. The Americans were forced into a disorganized scramble south through New Jersey, abandoning equipment in a desperate race to survive. The Continental Army was destroying itself. Between August and late November, troop strength plummeted from 20,000 men to fewer than 6,000 as soldiers succumbed to disease, desertion, and the effects of constant exposure. Washington was also facing a ticking clock. The enlistment contracts for the majority of his remaining soldiers were set to expire on December 31st. In a matter of days, the army would legally cease to exist. Without a victory to convince these men to stay, and the Continental Congress to keep providing funds, the revolution was finished. Washington's response was a coordinated, three-pronged attack on Trenton. On paper, a plan built on speed and encirclement. One force strikes from the north, a second blocks the southern escape route, and a third creates a diversion to the southeast to prevent reinforcements. The success of the operation relied entirely on synchronization. To defeat 1,500 professional soldiers, the Americans needed to cross the river in darkness and maintain the element of absolute surprise. On Christmas Day, the weather turned. A mix of snow and freezing rain hit the Delaware River, which was already clogged with massive, grinding chunks of ice that made any crossing look like a suicide mission. Loading 2,400 men and 18 cannons into cargo boats in the dark was agonizingly slow. The operation relied on a regiment of Massachusetts fishermen to pull the vessels through the ice and current. Many of the soldiers lacked basic equipment. Some were barefoot, wrapping their feet in rags to keep from freezing as they waited for their turn to climb into the boats. The ice slowed the crossing so severely that it took 9 hours to complete instead of the planned 6. The last boat didn't reach the New Jersey shore until 3 a.m. They were 3 hours behind schedule. Surprise was no longer possible. The sun would be up long before they reached Trenton. As Washington's column moved south, the rest of the plan fell apart. General Ewing's militia failed to cross the river, leaving the southern escape route open. Colonel Cadwalader also aborted his crossing. The diversion was gone. Washington was now advancing alone. During the 9-mile march to Trenton, men slipped on the frozen mud, leaving blood in the snow with every step. At least 2 soldiers froze to death before the town was even in sight. Then came a final report from the front of the column. The storm had soaked the men's muskets. The weapons would not fire. Washington's response was 2 words: use the bayonet. The tactical synchronization was gone, replaced by a desperate, brute force march toward an alerted enemy. The Americans reached Trenton around 8 a.m. Despite the late hour, the Hessians had only 10 minutes of warning to organize their defense against a force attacking from 2 directions. Henry Knox, a 26-year-old former bookseller, positioned 18 cannons at the heads of the town's 2 main streets. While the infantry's muskets were useless, the artillery was fully functional. Knox's guns created a kill zone down the narrow streets, shredding the Hessian attempts to form a countercharge and drowning out the noise of their regimental band. The Hessian command collapsed when Colonel Rahl was mortally wounded. He died with the unread warning note from the spy still sitting in his pocket. Within 45 minutes, the battle was over. Faced with overwhelming artillery fire and bayonet charges, the bulk of the garrison surrendered. The delay caused by the river crossing actually worked to Washington's advantage. The same storm that slowed the Americans convinced the Hessians that no army would attack in such conditions, leading them to relax their patrols. The wet gunpowder forced the Americans to forego a traditional musket duel and rely instead on Knox's artillery, which proved to be the decisive factor in the tight urban layout of Trenton. Even Ewing's failure to block the southern escape route was offset by the weather. The same storm had swollen the Assunpink Creek into a freezing torrent, trapping the fleeing Hessians more effectively than the missing militia could have. Every specific way the original plan failed ended up canceling out a Hessian advantage. The result was a victory that achieved its goals through a sequence of events that Washington could never have scripted. The final tally was over 900 Hessian soldiers captured, along with their equipment. The American casualty count from the battle itself was 0. As the news spread through the colonies in the following weeks, the mood shifted. The victory provided the psychological proof needed to secure re-enlistments and convince the Continental Congress to keep the war effort alive. The revolution survived 1776 not because the plan worked, but because a group of desperate men refused to turn back when it failed.
George Washington led the Continental Army across the Delaware River in late 1776. So please guys, answer my question and thank you so much for watching. Goodbye and take care. And this question is literally guys, do not easy. So try this my question answer. First of all, thank you so much for watching this my video. So goodbye and take care.